work for you.
On a sunny afternoon, Frank walked out of prison after serving 14 years. He had once been a feared mafia boss, running illegal businesses all over New York City. But now, everything had changed. His old crew was gone, and rival gangs from Colombia and China had taken over the drugs, prostitution, and the entire empire he once ruled. Somewhere in the city, Emilio, a powerful Colombian boss who controlled the prostitution trade, stepped out of one of his clubs. Suddenly, gunshots rang out, killing him instantly. The shooter vanished, leaving Emilio's body as a warning. Soon after, word spread that Frank had just been released from prison. At a nearby hotel, Jimmy was making a drug deal with King Tito, a major Colombian drug boss. Jimmy kept talking non-stop, which began to annoy Tito. Suddenly, Tito raised the price by 10%, catching Jimmy off guard. With no other option, Jimmy handed over a suitcase full of cash to get the crates of goods. But when they opened the suitcase, it wasn't cash. It was filled with sanitary pads. Before anyone could react, Jimmy pulled out a gun and shot King Tito and his men on the spot. With the Colombian crew wiped out, Jimmy and his team made it clear they would be visiting Frank very soon. At another hotel, it was clear that Jimmy's crew had been the ones to kill Emilio. Frank arrived there and was warmly greeted by their boss. Jimmy reported that both Emilio and King Tito had been taken out as planned. They had also seized all the cash and assets the two drug lords left behind. Jimmy told Frank about an upcoming meeting with Delicio, a middleman who was eager to meet him. Frank got ready and went to a fancy location where he was welcomed by lawyers, politicians, and even a district judge. Later, Frank met with Delicio and asked him to arrange a meeting with a drug lord named Clay. He pretended he wanted to get back into the business. After Delicio left, Frank walked through the subway tunnels with his advisor, Jennifer. Meanwhile, Delicio headed to a casino to find Clay, who was enjoying himself with his crew. Delicio delivered Frank's message, but Clay immediately refused. He mocked Frank for working with rival gang drug dealers and said he only did business with the Colombians. Without wasting any time, Clay told Delicio to go back and tell Frank he wasn't interested.
You tell him personally.
Meanwhile, on a crowded subway train, Frank and Jennifer were talking casually. Suddenly, 3 thugs approached, looking for trouble. But when they spotted the gun under Frank's coat, their attitude changed. Instead of starting a fight, Frank surprised them by giving them a wad of cash and telling them to visit him at the hotel when they were finished. Soon after, Delicio told Frank that Clay had agreed to a meeting. Frank and his crew quickly headed over. During the sit-down, Frank made it clear that from now on, every deal had to go through him. Clay refused. Without hesitation, Frank pulled out a gun and shot him on the spot. With Clay gone, Frank started gathering his old crew to rebuild his empire. Later, Frank met with the mayor to ask why the Bronx hospital still hadn't received its funding. The mayor explained that the budget was never approved and challenged Frank to raise $16 million himself if he wanted the project to move forward. Ignoring his lawyer's advice, Frank accepted the challenge. While Frank was relaxing with a drink at a bar, 3 detectives, Tommy, Roy, and Dennis, suddenly showed up and took him away. His lawyer tried to step in, but they ignored him. To keep things off the radar, the detectives drove Frank against traffic so they wouldn't be followed or leave a trail. They took Frank to a deserted alley where a man named Enrico lay unconscious and badly hurt. The cops suspected Frank was involved, but he insisted he knew nothing about it.
I don't know.
This only made them more frustrated, but without proof, they had to let him go. Enrico turned out to be a Colombian drug lord, and the detectives were already suspicious of Frank, especially since 3 major drug lords had been killed since he got out of prison. Meanwhile, Delicio met Wang, a Chinese triad boss, for a secret meeting at a movie theater. He was there to deliver Frank's business proposal, but Wang refused, demanding cash up front for a 220-pound shipment, knowing Frank didn't have that kind of money. To keep negotiations alive, Delicio suggested arranging a face-to-face meeting between Wang and Frank so they could talk and find a deal that worked for both sides. The next day, Jimmy stopped at a fast food restaurant. While there, he gave some money to an elderly woman and her grandchildren. Suddenly, detectives and police stormed in. It was a setup. With no escape, Jimmy was arrested on the spot. He was charged with killing several Colombians, and the police were using Enrico's testimony to pin the crimes on him. Meanwhile, Frank visited a rundown hospital in the Bronx that desperately needed government funding. He brought up the deal with Wong again, but they were still at a deadlock. Neither could agree on a price for the shipment. Frank tried a different approach, suggesting they partner up, sell the shipment together, and split the profits to help fund the hospital. But Wong still wouldn't budge. He continued to demand full payment up front. When Frank returned to the hotel, he learned that Jimmy had been arrested. Without wasting time, he decided they had to break him out that night. He gave the order, and Jennifer and the crew got to work. The team pulled it off, rescuing Jimmy safely. Later, when the three detectives arrived at the scene, they were furious Jimmy was already long gone. Jennifer warned the detectives that if they didn't cooperate, the case would end up in court. Soon after, in Chinatown, Frank and his crew hunted down the Chinese gangs. They struck quickly, wiping out every member in a brutal attack. After the massacre, Frank captured Wong and forced him to surrender all his assets. But even after taking everything, Frank still made sure Wong was eliminated shortly afterward. A few days later, the Bronx hospital finally opened to the public, funded by a large donation from Frank. The news infuriated Detective Dennis. To him, Frank had become the king of New York, while he and the other detectives were stuck with dull, thankless jobs. Dennis believed the system was rigged. Frank had too much money, too many connections, and knew exactly how to use the law to stay out of trouble. Dennis came up with a risky plan to have a group of detectives attack Frank and make it look like another gang war. Roy didn't like the idea and spoke up, but Dennis ignored him and went ahead anyway. One night, at a crowded nightclub, Frank's crew was partying while Frank stepped away to take a phone call. Shortly after, Delicio arrived with a drug lord from Los Angeles. The man knew Frank had a 200-pound shipment from Wong and wanted to buy it. But he didn't have enough cash, so he offered to pay half now and the rest after selling the goods in Frank refused, saying the deal would only happen if he got full payment up front. The man then asked to see the shipment first. As soon as he stepped outside, things turned deadly. He pulled out a gun and shot one of Frank's bodyguards. That's when the truth came out. Delicio had been secretly working with him all along. Seconds later, a group of armed men stormed in, and chaos erupted. Gunfire filled the air, turning the place into a war zone. In the middle of it all, Frank grabbed Jimmy and helped him escape. As they sped away, one of the attackers clung to their car door. When Jimmy tried to knock him off, they made a chilling discovery: he was a cold, ruthless cop. Frank didn't hesitate. He grabbed a fire extinguisher, struck the man hard, taking him down. When the other attackers saw this, they backed off and ran to report to their boss, Chase. That's when the truth came out. The attackers were actually detectives Tommy and Dennis. A high-speed chase followed, with bullets flying the entire way. After a long and intense pursuit, Frank finally escaped safely. Tommy and Dennis lost sight of Frank and Jimmy near the car area. While they kept searching, Frank suddenly appeared and rammed his car into theirs, causing a violent crash. In the chaos, Jimmy opened fire and ran, starting their final escape. Tommy quickly jumped out and chased after him, while Dennis checked the wrecked car, only to find that Frank was already gone. Under the bridge, a gunshot rang out. Tommy was hit. Jimmy kept firing, leaving him badly wounded. Suddenly, Dennis appeared and fired back, killing Jimmy instantly. He rushed to help Tommy, but it was too late. Tommy was already gone. Heartbroken and guilt-ridden over losing his partner, Dennis was left devastated, sinking into deep despair. Unable to handle the emotions at the funeral, Dennis quietly left and got into his car. As soon as he sat down, another car pulled up beside him. The window rolled down. It was Frank. Without a word, Frank opened fire, killing Dennis instantly. He then drove away calmly, as if nothing had happened. Later, Frank returned to his headquarters, where his men had already captured Delicio. It was time for a face-to-face. During the interrogation, Delicio revealed everything. He said Enrico had joined forces with the cops to take Frank down. He also admitted taking $50 million and was promised freedom if he revealed the location of Frank's headquarters. Hearing this, Frank didn't hesitate. He ordered his men to bury the traitor alive along with the blood-stained cash. As night fell, Delicio came home feeling tense and uneasy, only to find Frank already waiting inside. Frank spoke calmly but didn't hold back. He admitted he had killed Clay, who had made $13 million from gambling scams. He also took out Wong, a Chinatown businessman involved in human trafficking, and King Tito, who was running a child prostitution ring in New York. Frank defended his actions, saying he only eliminated bad people, those who deserved it, even if they believed they were on the side of justice. Before leaving, he warned that he would hire a hitman to take out anyone connected to his case. As part of his plan, Frank told Roy to handcuff him to a chair. But as soon as Frank left, Roy broke free and chased after him, heading straight to the subway station. Inside the train car, Frank grabbed a passenger and used them as a human shield. Roy begged him to surrender, but Frank didn't hesitate. He shot Roy and killed him on the spot. Then, as if nothing had happened, Frank walked out of the station and hailed a taxi. But once inside, he realized something: Roy had managed to shoot him, and the wound was far worse than he thought. At the same time, police were alerted about the shooting and rushed to the scene. The taxi driver saw Frank's gun, panicked, and jumped out to warn the officers. Within moments, the taxi was surrounded. Inside, Frank was fading fast from blood loss. Weak and badly wounded, he died right there in the back seat. The story leaves a profound lesson: live a peaceful life, obey the law, and stay away from criminal activities. Because embarking on the path of crime only leads to tragedy, chaos, and an inevitable end. It is always better to be an honest citizen than to become the misguided boss of a criminal world.